Good morning, everyone. My name is Kirby, and on behalf of the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the patent system, I would like to welcome you to the 12th annual Positive Behavior Support Implementers Forum. We are so excited you're here, and we're excited for an action-packed 2 days. We are really so excited about the fact that so many of you are committed to coming to this conference on a yearly basis and building your skills so you can move the needle for kids across the Commonwealth. So we just want to get an idea as to who's here, because really, when we look at conferences across the state, this one really does provide us with cross-representation across school districts and agencies and early childhood and higher ed. So just so folks in the room get to see who's here, if you are in early childhood, would you please stand up? Thank you. Woohoo! And I don't know who, the gentleman who is doing the slides back there, if you could advance them, I'd appreciate it, because I know you're monitoring them from the back. If you are an elementary teacher, whether you're a general education teacher, an ESL teacher, or a special education teacher, could you please stand? Wow. If you are a secondary teacher, content teacher, ESL teacher, special ed teacher, please stand. School district administrators, whether it be building level staff or district level staff, if you could please stand. Woohoo! Our agency partners, cross agencies, Department of Health, the Department of Human Services, as well as other related organizations, if you could please stand. There are some, yay! And last but not least, higher education. If you represent higher education, if you could please stand. Well, we want to let you know through the patent system that our work is aligned with the Bureau of Special Education, and we want you to know that your work and the work that the Department of Education funds through the patent system is aligned to a broader community of practice that represents cross-agency stakeholders who are doing and aligning the work around a community of practice for behavioral mental health. And so in honoring the folks who have come before our office, the Patent Central Office, assuming this work, I want to acknowledge the fact that the Patent Pittsburgh office, under the leadership of Dr. James Palmero and Carol Good, have led this work for the last 11 years. And Dr. Palmero has gone on to a new position at an intermediate unit, but I do want to acknowledge their leadership over the last 11 years, and we really want to build off of the amazing work that's been done for our kids across the Commonwealth. We know that the foundation that's been built is paying off. Your work is paying off. We know more schools are implementing PBIS with fidelity. We have over 200 schools here today who are receiving recognition as being able to implement Tier 1. When we think about what that means, it means that evidence-based instructional practices are happening for kids. I mean, the core of what we do when we think about behavioral support and positive behavior support is we ensure that teachers are engaging so kids can't engage in problematic behaviors. If we're implementing evidence-based instructional practices and kids are engaged, then we have less problematic behavior. So it is so exciting to acknowledge the fact that so many of you are implementing Tier 1 with fidelity. Anytime we do root cause analysis with school districts around how to support school improvement, we always look at what does core instruction look like? What does Tier 1 look like? What does Tier 1 look like for behavior? What does Tier 1 look like for academics? We know clearly that we can't address interventions or supports unless there's a solid Tier 1 support, unless the core is in place. And so we must acknowledge that and say, congratulations to all of you who are doing that. But we do know that we still have lots of work to do. A recent study by Riffel and St. Clair out of Princeton took all of the data from the Harvard's implicit-explicit bias study. If any of you have taken that implicit bias test online, you were a part of this data. And what they are clearly coming up with is the fact that there are still significant issues when it comes to how our students, particularly students of color, African American students and Latino students, are disciplined in our public schools. What they did is they took this data and they looked at it longitudinally and they looked at it at a county-based level. And what you will see here is the data from this, and this was just released last month, where they looked at 5 areas: school arrests, expulsions, law enforcement referral, in-school suspension, and out-of-school suspension. And if you look there, that's the differential. If you are African American in our schools across the country, the likelihood that you will be suspended versus your same age peer. If you are interested, we're going to share this research with you. We can get the link out to you, but what is really powerful about it is it provides you with an interactive map where you can look at data based on each state and county. So right now we're in Dauphin County, and if you are African American in Dauphin County, you are 7 times more likely than your white peer to be suspended from school. We need to do something about that work. And that is why I'm so excited to talk to you about the landscape in Pennsylvania. When we think of the landscape in Pennsylvania, the Department of Education has been very committed and intentional about ensuring that multi-tiered systems of support for both academics and behavior are the Department of Education's approach to addressing school improvement. So if you are identified for federal accountability, whether it be for additional targeted support because of subgroup populations, or if you're being identified for comprehensive school improvement support, the Department of Education is indicating to the US Department of Education, so Pennsylvania, that multi-tiered systems of support for academics and behavior is our approach to school improvement. So what does that mean, and how does that align with PDE's priorities? PDE has directed pattern in our work, and obviously that work is aligned with the larger community of practice, but they've directed us to update all of our training materials to support and align with the Office of Special Education Programs recommendations, specifically being more targeted around culturally responsive instruction. They would like us to really address more supports around advanced tiers. Now, we know where we are and the work that's been done has been critical because you can't address more significant advanced tiers and more significant work in advanced tiers unless that tier 1 is in place. We know that there's been work done in advanced tiers, and we want to continue to do that work. Another overarching priority of everything we're doing, and Dr. Nicole Holland-Sims is leading this work for the Department of Education, is on equity, and what does it really mean to equitably be serving our kids. So we will be looking at aligning this work and much more targeted around equity. Disproportionality is an area that the US Department of Education under the Obama administration had provided guidelines around identifying schools who are disproportionately identifying students of color for suspensions and expulsions. The Trump administration rescinded those guidelines, and as you probably know, about 6 weeks ago, a federal court told the Trump administration they had to reenact them. We know that the US Department of Education is fighting that, but what we know here in Pennsylvania is that the leadership here is doing the right thing, and we're moving forward with disproportionality and supporting our schools in this area regardless. And so stay tuned for more supports and more dialogue around disproportionality. We know mental health crisis is significant for our kids, and again, the work the department is asking us to think about and align is mental health. Suicide prevention, another area, and as we know, across Pennsylvania and right here in the central region, lots of indicators that we need to be thinking about as we strategically support our educators in meeting the needs of our kids. We're going to be looking at least restrictive environment data specific to schools that are implementing PBIS. And we want to know whether or not students who are in emotional support programs that are in schools that are implementing PBIS are in least restrictive environments. So are those students in more restrictive or least restrictive environments? And last but not least, the department is very, very committed to both the Patent, IU, and other related supports and agencies providing direct consultative support to LEAs across the state, both at the school level and the classroom level. So as we think about this landscape in Pennsylvania, we are positioned under ESSA to really make a difference. And the work that's been done to date builds off of that, and we have an opportunity to align MTSS, academics, and behavior to ensure equitable outcomes for all our kids. One of the favorite quotes that we use in the Patent Harrisburg office is a quote by Teddy Roosevelt. "Far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." And everybody in this room is working hard at work worth doing, and we are here to continue to move the needle for all of our kids. So we want your feedback and your help. As we think about the patent system and the community practice in general, we want you to be thinking about how we can, and give us feedback on how we can more equitably support this important work. So in the survey that you will get as you go through these sessions, we'll ask you questions about that, and we really would like your honest and thoughtful feedback on how we can continue to grow to meet your needs. The Implementers Forum for 2020 will happen, and we are really excited to continue to grow that. And there is a question in the survey specific to what kind of things that you would like to see in the sessions for next year's Implementers Forum. We are optimistic that the forum will take place here in Hershey, but we're dealing with some federal grant guidelines around competitive bids. What we do know is we'll have an Implementers Forum. We're optimistic it will happen here in Hershey, but we will have it, and we'll be letting you know where we have it officially as soon as we know. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's opening keynote. And you'll actually have an opportunity to hear two exciting and dynamic presenters, Dr. Laura Riffel and Miss Andreal Davis. Dr. Laura Riffel, who is first, whom many of you have had the pleasure to hear from last year, will be our first keynote. She has provided professional development to thousands of teachers, parents, counselors, psychologists, administrators, other related service providers throughout her career. She travels the world presenting on positive interventions and has authored several books, and it is our great pleasure to have her join us here today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Riffel.
Thank you. All right. I told the guys in the back I fell off a stage one time in front of 300 people and broke my leg, so I'll try not to do that. Do you ever wake up in the morning and you've got a song in your head? Yeah, I think they're called earworms. Have you heard that? So I've had an earworm in my head. I bet you think it's this one, but it's not. But I want to put it in your head, because since I'm suffering, I think it would be really nice if you all suffered too. So I would like everybody in the room to stand up. I know, you just got comfy. All right, well, we're here to learn new things, and this is what Elmo is all about. And Elmo has a dance. So I would like for you to have my earworm in your ear when you wake up tomorrow morning. We're all going to do the Elmo dance.
Dance, come on! Happy, happy dance, dance, happy, happy dance.
Come on.
When we learn something new, we do a happy dance, dance. Let's see your happy dance. Yeah, cool. See you next time. Keep learning, and we'll love you. Happy, happy dance, dance, happy, happy dance, dance. When we learn something new, we do the happy dance, dance.
All right. You will thank me tomorrow morning when you wake up and that song is in your head. When we learn something new, we do the happy dance. And that's what the next 2 days are all about. So today I wanted to talk to you about increasing your gen ratio. How many of you have heard of gen ratio before? Oh, good. I'm going to get to introduce it to a lot of people. You actually have heard of it. You just didn't know that it was called gen ratio. It is an ancient Chinese philosophy. And what the Chinese philosophy says is that what comes in is what comes out. So energy in is energy out. I know you're wondering. So gen ratio is bringing positive in so that positive comes back out. And it is governed by things that you watch on television. It is governed by things that you read. It is governed by those that you spend your time with. I talk to kids at the alternative school about this. As a matter of fact, I give them a homework assignment. They think it's the greatest homework assignment ever. I have them watch TV for 4 hours. But I have them tally how many negatives they see in 4 hours and how many positives they see in 4 hours. And then they bring it back the next day. The numerator are the positives. The denominator is the negatives. And this was the average. So we did a bunch of math with what everybody saw. The average in 4 hours was 5 positives on TV and 65 negatives. That's a gen ratio of 1 to 13, 1 positive for every 13 negatives. So what's going to come back out? Negative. So remember when you very first learned about PBIS and your PBIS trainer said, we want you to do 4 positives for every negative? Do you guys remember that? The truth is, here's the real truth, what the research says is that when you hear something negative, it takes 8 positives to make up for that 1 negative. So when we first started training PBIS, we told schools we want 8 positives for every negative. We came back a month later and they had on garlic necklaces and they were like, go away, we can't do your thing, you're sucking the life out of us, leave. And so I wanted to give you some ideas to help increase your gen ratio and to help kids increase their gen ratio. And so I'm doing a little advertisement here. I have a Facebook page. Now this is not the kind of Facebook page like you have with your friends. I just had the best cheeseburger I've ever had in my life. This is positive posters for your classroom door. And when I train schools, I make every adult in the building have a poster outside their door. And the poster is a laminated sheet of construction paper because we're poor. That's all we can afford. But we write positive messages every day on those, and then we erase them and put a new positive. So as kids walk down the hallway, all they see are positive messages. Positive things happen to positive people, smile, it increases your face value. So imagine being a kid in a school walking down the hallway and just seeing positive, positive, positive coming at you. And so if you'll go to this website, every day I post more positive things for you to copy. You can print them off and put them there, or you can just have a student write. You can Google positive messages for teens, positive messages for elementary students. You can put all kinds of things on these posters. But I want you to think about that. Now, I skipped this real quick, but this is my mantra: energy flows where attention goes. And I think that ought to be painted on your staff wall. Energy flows where attention goes. So if we spend our time walking around the classroom going, cut that out, stop that, no hitting, guess what we're going to see more of? But if we say, I like the way you're keeping your hands to yourself, I like the way you're using helping hands, I like the way you're not on your cell phones.
For everyone, follow
so
MT.
One of the things, let me back up. One of the things that I make my schools do. How many of you have your schools or your school, you have PowerPoints or videos about appropriate behavior? How many of them start with the inappropriate behavior? I make my schools take that out and
For everyone,
only show the
follow
positive.
MTS.
So we just do the positive.
At Mark Twain, we listen to adults and conflict managers.
We follow
everything's
directions from
positive.
adults and look for conflict managers.
I'm just going to show you
when
one
we
part of
need
this.
them.
We take turns on the equipment.
We share and play fair.
We include everyone who wants to play.
Think and learn.
On the Mark Twain playgrounds, we avoid conflict.
When someone isn't sharing or playing fair, we can walk away and play something different.
We line up when the bell rings or whistle blows.
When the whistle blows, we stop what we're doing. We may have to tell ourselves, I may not like this, but I accept it. Then we line
I
up
may not like
immediately
this,
and wait
but I
in an
accept
orderly
it.
manner.
So I like how they tell the kids, we know you don't want to do this. Then we use videos to teach kids about appropriate behavior
Hi,
as
I'm
individuals.
Taylor. This is me sitting up straight and tall in my chair. This is me waiting to be called on in class. This is me learning about other people's personal space. I envision a hula hoop around them. This keeps me from getting too close. My teacher is proud of me when I respect other people's personal space. My parents are proud of me when I respect other people's personal space. I'm proud of myself when I respect other people's personal space.
Way to go, Taylor.
Taylor's just an actress that I hired to do this video. This is called video self-modeling, and in all of the journals that I read, they talk about video self-modeling, especially for kids on the spectrum. But I find it very useful to help kids in Gen Ed just learn appropriate behavior. So you can do it individually. The same way we use video modeling for the whole school, we can use positive video self-modeling for individual students. And just have lunch with them, do a quick video, send a copy home and ask the family members to go over it in the morning before they come to school and remind them. And that's a really positive way to teach a replacement behavior to students. So it doesn't cost any money. It can be videotaped with your cell phone or an iPad if you have one. You don't have to have a fancy camera or anything like that. And you can just email it to the family members and have it. So that's a cool thing. We can use literature to teach social skills, and that's a really positive way to sneak those social skills in. So I have posted on behaviordoctor.org, which is my website, under materials. I've posted under presentations, under Hershey, Pennsylvania, 32 pages of free resources for you that are literature books about social skills. It tells you what social skill it teaches and what age level it's appropriate for. And I'm working on getting more in there, but right now I have 32 pages for you of different things that you can use positively to teach appropriate social skills so that we can inundate the kids with that. So the tiny URL, if you just want to do that, is tinyurl.com/lit resources for SEL. And I use some abbreviations there to keep it short. I'll give you a second to copy that. Sorry. Okay. So this is, I want to tell you, and I'm not bragging, but this is one of the coolest things I think I did as a teacher. I've taught every single grade, pre-K through adult, gen ed and special ed. Every single day, every single year, at the elementary level, every single kid went home with a love note. Every night while I was watching TV, I would write, Johnny, I love the way you. I'd leave a blank space and sign it, love Miss Riffel. Susie, I love the way you, leave a blank space, and I would sign it, love Miss Riffel. So while I was teaching, I would see something happen and I'd pull out my little stack of Post-it notes. Usually they were the ugly square Post-it notes, but every once in a while, when my husband wasn't monitoring my spending, I would buy these cute ones. But it didn't really matter to the kids. It was what was written on it. I would pull those out and write, Johnny, I love the way you picked up Susie's crayon when it rolled off her desk and you handed it back to her. I promise you, every single day, every single kid does at least one amazing thing that you can point out. When I taught little kids, like kindergarten, I lined the kids up by reading it to them. Johnny, you can line up. I love the way you walked Billy down to the nurse when he fell and scraped his knee. Susie, you can line up. I love the way you. And that's how I lined the kids up. When I taught older kids, I would just hand it to them. I never once saw a kid wad it up and throw it in the trash or, put it in their pocket to throw away later. They always read it and smiled. And I thought that that was probably pretty important. When I taught secondary, I did 5 kids an hour, because when you're secondary, you have like 180 kids. So you couldn't teach if you were writing 180 love notes every day. Plus, you'd probably end up on the 6 o'clock news. So for not teaching. I've always tried to avoid 6 o'clock news. So I would do 5 kids an hour, and by Friday I would have enough for every student would have one, and I would just pass them out. So I want to tell you about a couple times these came back to kind of haunt me. Haunt me. See, I believe in love notes for everyone, so people in my family get love notes, and I always notice things that they do. It's always good to practice on your home children, husband, spouse, what you're going to do at school. So my husband took his lunch every day, and he loves nuts as his snack. And so he would crack walnuts and eat them because it took a while to crack them and eat them, so it would make him eat slower. So he liked doing that. He had a nut cracker. So I very carefully cracked a nut, took all the meat out of it, put a love note inside it, and super glued it shut and put it back in his bag. Now, I think I should tell you this. My husband ran a prison. I went to pick him up that day, and he was not smiling when I picked him up. And I heard somebody say, "Hey, Riff, love the way you took that prisoner down today." And I was like, oh. We get out to the car, and he doesn't even look at me. He's so embarrassed. Because don't ever put a love note in my lunch again. And I'm like, why? And he goes, I gave my lunch away because I went out to eat with the colonel, and somebody popped that. I love the way you took I can count on you to take the trash out all the time. So that was embarrassing to him. Another time that it came back to bite me, I was teaching kindergarten, and I had a meeting all day, so I was gone. And I got a nasty note from the sub. Don't you hate when you get a nasty note from the sub? I mean, I just hate it. She wrote, "Your children refused to go home yesterday. They said they had to have a love note, and near as I can tell, I was supposed to write 'I love you' on a Post-it note and give it to the children. So I learned to have generic love notes that said, 'I love the way you were good for the substitute today.' And then I put in the subfolder, 'If you want the children to go home, you must pass these out.'" But I want to tell you about my butterfly moment. I taught kindergarten, and after several years of teaching kindergarten, my back went out, and I jumped up to 3rd grade because I thought, I won't have to bend over as much with 3rd grade. And I looped with a group of kids, and I was their 3rd grade, their 4th grade, and their 5th grade teacher. So it was amazing. I got so close to those kids, but I also had been their kindergarten teacher. So I know their parents really well. I mean, we're all friends on Facebook now, not back when I was their teacher. But in 2006, one of the moms of one of those kids Googled me. I didn't know I could be Googled. She Googled me, and she said, "I found you. And I just wanted to tell you, Sean is graduating." And I asked him who his favorite teacher of all time was, and he said it was you. And I wrote back, and I said, "Well, I had a 4 out of 13 chance of being his favorite teacher." And she said, no, you understood his ADHD. I'm like, yeah, because I live it. She said, "You understood his learning disabilities, his severe severe learning disabilities, and you understood what was going on in our family with the divorce and how the children were being pawns between the two family members, she said he appreciated that you understood everything that he was going through. And she told me where he was going to college, what he was going to do after he got out of college and all those things. The last thing she said to me was, P.S., he still has every single love note you ever gave him. Do you think it mattered? Here's an 18-year-old kid. She said he keeps them in his underwear drawer, and you know you keep the good stuff in your underwear drawer. So I would like to challenge you. You might not be able to do it every single day if you don't want to, if you're not that invested into it, but at least once a week, send a positive note home to every single kid. If you're secondary, I would like for you to do it every week, but start with once a month. You'll be so surprised at what the kids will come back and say to you. It just means so much to the kids. You don't have to talk like me. When you're old, you can get away with saying, I love the way you. You can say, I like the way you. I just love everything, so I'm always talking about love. What we label is what we see. I got called into a preschool in New York City, and their biggest problem was hitting. And I watched for half a day, every single adult, every time a kid hit, they said, quit hitting, stop hitting, hands aren't for hitting. So what word is reverberating in the kids' heads? So I made a quick video about hands are for helping. We started labeling helping hands. We started using the term helping hands. And in 2 weeks, hitting wasn't a problem in that school at all anymore. What you label is what you see. Try it at home. I used to tell my youngest son he was the best poop scooper that anybody had ever seen. You need to know we had a dog. His job was to clean up the yard before it got mowed. And so we used to tell him, my husband tells me that I am the best at unloading the dishwasher. So you can all quit trying. I'm the best. I tell him he's the best at doing the laundry. And I haven't done laundry since 1980, so it works really well. What you label is what you see. We know from Shores, Gunter, and Jack that we can improve behavior by 80% just by pointing out what one person is doing correctly. I even do that with my college level students in the classes that I teach. I've got one group that was really, really messy, so I caught one adult taking their trash, and I said, well, thank you so much for taking your trash over. That way I don't have to walk around and do it before I go home tonight. And pretty soon everybody started taking their trash. Prior to that, they had not been. So we know this, but we use it less than 10% of the time. The other thing that we have to do is lift each other up. You know, we focus in PBIS a lot about catching the kids being good. It's kind of our mantra. How many of you spend time catching your cohorts being good? I want you to turn right now and say something positive to somebody at your table. And it can't be about their clothes. It has to be something about their... "30 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do you guys hear how happy this room sounds? This room sounds happy. That's increasing your gen ratio. So I saw this quote this morning on Facebook. I want you all to hear it. They didn't quite use one of the words. I'm changing a word because I don't want to cuss on videotape. I love when people who have been through turmoil walk out of the flames carrying buckets of water for those still consumed by the fire. And that's what we're doing, you guys, when we lift each other up. We are carrying buckets of water for each other when we are consumed by the fire. So we need to lift each other up. This is one of my schools. This is up in the staff lounge. It changes every month. There are tons of 3x5 cards laying around, and staff are encouraged to write positive messages to each other and put it up anonymously on the board. I love the way you always start the coffee in the morning. I love the way you empty that one trash can that the custodian always forgets. I love the way you smile at the family members when they're dropping their children off in the morning. So I want you to think about increasing the gen ratio between adults as well as increasing the gen ratio between the kids. I make all my schools take a funny journal like this. This is my fuzzy journal. It really has the eyeballs on it, you guys. And so we put everybody in the whole building, I mean everybody. If you're an adult in that building, you've got a page in that book. And what we do is we write one positive thing about one person. We put it in their box. They have 24 hours to read the positive things somebody wrote about them, and then they have to write something positive about somebody else in the book and put it in their box. And every 24 hours, this book changes hands, and so there's a positive message system going through the school. The only thing is we have to watch, you know, the one person whose desk kind of is that person? We have to make sure that person doesn't lose it. Okay, how many of you do this? The 3x5 cards? Remember when you very first, George Sagai taught us all this. Make a tear on the long side for every positive that you give. Make a tear on the short side for every negative that you give, and then look to see what your gen ratio is. That's your gen ratio. So I'm going to challenge you to get those cards back out. And if you don't want to waste cards, you know the junk mail that you get that come with the little flyers? All those things that come in your mail, just bring those to school and start making tears on the long side of the card. I do this with family members. What gets measured gets done, and it's so important. If you don't want to do the card, you can put 30 beads on a shoelace. I mean, that's reusable. And every time you give a positive, move a bead down. Every time you give a negative, you have to move 4 beads back. So that makes you hurry up and compliment 4 kids, or else you'll start the day, you know, in the hole. Nobody wants to start the day in the hole. If you don't want to carry beads around, you can do paper clips in a cup. Whatever you do, a sports clicker, M&Ms in a jar, you know, use the sports clicker, count how many positives that night, put that number of M&Ms in a jar. On Friday, get yourself a big Diet Coke, you know, kind of to outweigh the sugar that you're about to intake, but you get to eat all the M&Ms. So what gets measured gets done. So I want to ask you, what's your idea to up your gen ratio? Thank you so much for letting me start your day off. Happy, happy, dance, dance. I hope you have that song in your ear in the morning.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to have the distinct honor of introducing our second keynote. Andreal Davis is a wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, sister, aunt, and friend. Most recently, she has published her first culturally responsive children's book called Dreaming in Ethnic Melodies that shares the hopes and dreams she has held for her own 3 sons. She currently serves as Wisconsin's Culturally Responsive Practices Coordinator at the Wisconsin Response to Intervention Center. In that role, she leads this work along with a team of colleagues training practitioners across the state of Wisconsin and nationally from a model she co-created called the Model to Inform Culturally Responsive Practices that focuses on what it means to be culturally responsive, starting with self and moving that work across an equitable, multi-level system of support. We are so excited to have Andreal with us today in Pennsylvania. Please help me welcome Ms. Andreal Davis.
Good morning. I have to repeat what was just said because I haven't memorized that way, so bear with me. My name is Andreal Davis. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a niece, I'm a grandmother, I'm a friend, and I'm the Culture Responsive Practices Coordinator for the state of Wisconsin. I'm here today to ask you a question. How are the children on the other side of the table? Wake up all you teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who are coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. No, 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 no. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, y'all. Just you and me. Just making sure you all are awake. And I would be remiss if I came to talk about culturally responsive practices and family engagement if I didn't bring my own mother into the room. She calls me every day, every morning, and she wakes me up with a song that she wrote called Good Morning. She shares that song with her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, and I want to start our day together sharing it with you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Today's a new beginning, there's so much to do. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Today's a new beginning, there's so much to do. Good morning. We just celebrated Mother's Day a couple of days ago, and so I wanted to make sure that I brought my own mother into the room. But I also want to extend a belated Happy Mother's Day to the mothers in the room and to those of you who serve in motherly roles, both men and women alike. Throughout the presentation today, I will be doing small shout-outs to mothers in the room, and I will be demonstrating how many mothers have fought for educational equity for their own children and other people's children. I also want to, again, keep the energy of what a mother brings to the educational system and the funds of knowledge that families can bring to the educational system when we're doing our PBIS work across a K-12 system. So be listening for those themes as we move forward in the presentation. I have to also say that beyond my mother being in the room, I also have other family members that I would like to bring in the room. I'd like to bring some of their spirits in the room, and some of them are here today with me physically. A lot of times when we are trying to choose a new pastor for our church, we look to see who comes with that person and who is endorsing that person and who can verify the credentials and the credibility of that person. So I want to keep with that tradition. Today I have my own husband in the room, Arlington William Davis III. Would you please stand? And one of my sorority sisters who has been a sister to me for over 30 plus years. I don't get to see her often, but she lives in this area, so I couldn't go without taking up on the opportunity to get together with her. Terry, please stand. So I just want you all to know I have my peeps in the room. Up on the screen, if you look to the left-hand corner, you'll see my grandfather, Sylvester Jackson, and my grandmother, Thelma Jackson. In the picture below, you'll see me with my sister, Darneen, and my sister, Erilyn. And when I was a little younger, there's a picture to the right of that with me and my brother and my sister, Darneen, my brother, Derek. To the right of my grandfather, you'll see my family, my boys with their girlfriends and fiancés, and my special little person, Akai, my grandson, who I'll be talking about as we move through the presentation. To the right there are my nieces and my mother and my husband and my son. And to the right of them, all the way to the left of the screen, you'll see my Wisconsin RTI Center family, because family goes beyond just your biological family. I have my directors and co-directors at the top, and you'll see a man in a black shirt named Ken Smith. I want you to remember him because I'll be coming back to him to really share with you what he's taught me. Melanie Leverson, Michelle Bell-Navis, Paula Fernandez, Kate Higley, and Galmua Her. I want to speak their names into the room. My three sons, Arlington William Davis IV, Armani Bourgeois Davis, and Ari Jackie Davis. Armani, who was in the middle, just gave me the best Mother's Day gift ever. 2 days ago, after a long 9-year journey, he walked the stage and earned his bachelor's degree. And he talked about on his Facebook post, after 9 years, 3 schools, and 200 credits, I finally persevered and earned that degree. And he knew his mother was not going to settle for anything less. My son, too, the first son that you see, was born 1 pound 9 ounces, has an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree. And my son all the way to the right, Ari Davis, is scheduled on time for a 4-year graduation, making up for his brother's time that he took in May of 2020. So those are some people who are a part of the various families that I belong to. And again, I wanted to make sure I introduce them to you as we talk about family engagement. I'll get this right yet. One place that I know I can go in the community and be filled up with music similar to the music that my mother sings to me each morning, and where I can go and hear affirmations that evoke that sense of positive energy that Laura talked about, is my church. When I walk through the doors of the church, I'm met by extended family, and many of those extended family members are students and their families. I also am met by ushers who extend warm hugs, a welcome, a handshake, and they give me a program or a bulletin that says, "We have diligently been preparing for you all week." When we talk about a welcoming environment, that is one of the places that I look forward to going to each week, knowing that I'm going to be embraced and knowing that people are going to do everything possible to let me know I belong there and I'm welcome there. My husband and I open the doors of the sanctuary and we find our favorite seats in the pew. We wait for the section of the program where our pastor will ask us to turn to our neighbors and say, "Neighbor, you sure look good." So I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor," listen to how I'm saying it, "you sure look good." Go. When I say bring it, you say back, bring it, bring it, bring it, way back. Now, when we talk about, I told you to remember Kent, because Kent taught me a lot about what I know about PBIS. And he said you have to teach the behaviors to fluency. And so I've had to do a little bit of work on my husband when it comes to who do you turn to first, because in church we do it to both neighbors, and I've had to work on him a little bit about who you turn to first, which would be me. And I'm here to tell you that I have caught him being good. He is making progress. So let's give him a round of applause. The use of affirmations has been researched And Jeffrey Cohen from the School of Education at Stanford University, along with a team of people, found that when you use affirmations before taking standardized tests, many students who are underserved or students of color reportedly outscore students who have not used affirmations. It's like you speak into existence what you want to believe about yourself. And you hold on to a sense of confidence that going into that standardized test and having those words to kind of rely on evokes something different in you, and it evokes a sense of confidence that's different than when you don't use affirmations. So I'm going to ask you to stand and let's do an affirmation for our morning meeting. This is an affirmation that I wrote and I used to use in a Saturday program that my husband and I co-directed called the African American Ethnic Academy. And I used to tell the kids that when they say the affirmation, I want you to blow me back with the conviction and with the belief that you have around the words that you're saying. So don't just say the words, really begin to take them on and believe them. Repeat after me. I am somebody.
I am somebody.
I am capable and lovable. I am teachable, therefore I can learn. I can do anything when I try. I'll be the best that I can be. Each day, each day, each day, each day. I will not waste time because it is too valuable. Point to yourself, and I am too precious and bright. I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. You may be seated. Good job. One of the things that I've been taught is that you pay homage to those who have filled you up, those who have given to you, those who have shared their wisdom and knowledge with you. And I wanted to share with you some of the scholars whose shoulders I stand on, like Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings and Dr. Chike Akua, Dr. Baruti Kafele, Dr. Marion Wright Edelman, Dr. Augusta Mann, Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, Jeffrey Canada, Dr. Noma Lemoyne, Dr. Shiraki Holly, Dr. Milana Karanga, Tina Jenkins, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Dr. Julie Washington. Another person whose shoulders I stand on is Sojourner Truth. And I made a promise to her when I starred in a children's play about her life that I would continue her work. She said in the play, though I could neither read nor write, I could talk and I could sing. I would wander the country talking and singing until the people heard and understood and made wrong things right. So I stand before you today, continuing her work. So I opened up with a question, how are the children on the other side of the table? Whenever one African tribe member of the Maasai greets another, they ask a question, Kasirian and Gira. Not how do you do or how's it going, but how are the children? It's wonderfully revealing about the values of Maasai society. Their first concern is the next generation, and the hoped for reply is equally revealing. All the children are well. Not my children, not some of the children, all the children are well. For the Maasai, society cannot be well unless all the children are well. The question the Maasai ask each other is revealing not just of their society, but of ours. Whatever tests we set ourselves and whatever achievements we boast of, the question that goes to the heart of the health of our society and schools should be the same. How are the children? I talked a little bit earlier about my grandson, and there he is. He's awesome. And my husband told me to say awesome sauce, because my husband is his BFF, and they say awesome sauce to each other. So I had to include that. His name, again, is Akai. And when he was born, a lot of people poured into him, a lot of people in our family. Of course, his mom and his dad and my mother singing her song, and lots of different people poured into Akai. But my husband and I were particularly concerned, especially with me being an educator, about preparing Akai for school, particularly for kindergarten. So when he was an infant, we had a schedule. We had time that Akai would listen to music, 5 little speckled frogs down on a speckled log. No, the whole CD. We read stories to him. We had sensory time. We had cuddle time, time for a nap. And as time progressed, I began to get really anxious because his parents didn't have him in a preschool or a daycare setting, and he was an only child, and I was concerned about what he would be learning to prepare for kindergarten. So we signed him up for a program called Play and Learn, where there was a little bit of play, but there was learning. But there was much more that took place in that program. We wanted to make sure that Akai knew what it meant to sit crisscross applesauce during the circle time. We wanted him to know when it was time to listen in circle time and when it was time to speak. We wanted him to know how to be able to sit and listen to a story. We wanted him to be able to use his words versus throwing a tantrum like he did with us at home. We wanted him to learn to share, especially being an only child. We wanted him to be able to expand his social skills and learn how to interact with other children. But there were things that we brought to the program as well. As in the title of this presentation, how do we use families' funds of knowledge in our PBIS work across a K-12 system? So my husband and I went in and we taught the teachers that his favorite color was green. We also taught him that when Akai got upset, he likes to count sheep, and that he will count through his crying by counting sheep, a little something like this. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep, 4 sheep. You okay? Not yet. 5 sheep, 6 sheep, all the way up to 10. Sometimes we wouldn't reach 10. He would be okay before then. Other times we would have to move past that. But we taught them the various things that we knew about Akai. We taught them about the alphabets that he already knew, like the letter G for his BFF, G-pop, and for his grandmother, Grandma. We taught them many things about Akai, and we worked collaboratively to create a successful educational experience for Akai. And so I really want us to hold on to that thought. I wanted to share that with you because I wanted to also share a cultural vignette from a parent who had the same fears, the same hopes, the same dreams, the same worries, same concerns, and an experience similar to what we were worried about Akai experiencing. I also want to add that in that program, I also began to notice that many of the parents were reacting to Akai in a certain way, because in that picture, I believe Akai was probably about 2 years old. So look at his stature. And people were expecting behaviors from him, particularly some of the parents, that were inappropriate for his developmental stage. So as I noticed those kinds of things, I began to get worried about what was going to happen to him when he went to school. So listen to this cultural vignette. For African American parents with children in the public school system, dealing with teachers from a cultural background different from theirs can be challenging and frustrating. My son Marcus is a good case in point. The trouble started in kindergarten. He was in love with his teacher, a tall white woman, but the feeling was not mutual. Marcus wanted to answer all the questions all the time. She did not recognize the oral tradition from which my son comes and was unable to channel his strong communication skills. One awful day, his teacher called me to tell me that my son was continually defiant. Her words came hot as if she was spitting venom through the phone. My heart dropped. His father and I are both educators, so where had we gone wrong? Why were we getting this call about our sweet little Marcus? There must be some mistake, I thought. I went to his supposed defiance. I went to see his supposed defiance. I slinked along the wall to the classroom door, peering in undetected. The teacher spotted me and promptly summoned my son over to the carpet for reading time. Marcus, do you want to come over and join us for circle time? She called out in the pleasant voice he had come to love. Marcus looked up from his work and politely replied, no. Tucked in the corner of his bottom lip for optimal concentration and returned to his task. She shot me a smirking glance. The look said, see, I told you he was defiant. I stood there stunned. I had just witnessed a cultural disconnect. Perhaps if such an exchange had occurred at the playground or at the local ice cream shop, I would not have been so angry. But this was occurring at school, where we know the stakes are high, and such labels of defiance can have detrimental effects for children, especially Black boys. Culturally, Black parents generally give directions. White parents tend to give choices and expect the child to choose the desired option. Marcus' teacher was giving him choices, not directives. After she smirked, I modeled for the teacher the intonation and phrasing which would elicit the response she wanted. In a kind but firm voice, I said, Marcus, put your things away and go over to circle time. Marcus looked a little panicked when he first saw me, but when he saw my smile, he quickly responded to my directive, stopped his task, and walked over to circle time with his peers. The teacher was amazed. The teacher subsequently gave directives, and Marcus went on to have a good kindergarten year. But what if I hadn't gone on to the school to see for myself? What if I had internalized the incident as my fault for not raising an obedient child? Years after Marcus's kindergarten year, I served on committees reviewing cases of students being expelled, mostly Black and Latino boys, as our data suggested earlier today. We reviewed their cumulative files looking for patterns of disciplinary misconduct. The documentation started in kindergarten. I saw my son's eyes when I looked into the faces of the young men before me. I realized that if I were not a parent willing to engage schools and school personnel, my son could have easily been on the other side of the table. Parent engagement is essential to students' achievement. So going back to the question that we started with earlier today, how are the children on the other side of the table? And how can we use families' funds of knowledge, culturally responsive family funds of knowledge, in our PBIS work across the K-12 system? So I'm here today to offer some ideas about things that I've done in the past and things that I look to do that I think might be able to help us answer that question. I think we begin by embracing, engaging, and empowering our students and families. Over the years, I've done a lot of work, and again, I told you my husband and I co-directed the Saturday Academic and Cultural Enrichment Program for 12 years while working full-time jobs. 125 students in that program, and we did a lot of research around Black education, and I want to share that with you, but I want you to expand and open your mind to these ideas around other students as well, because once I became Director of Equity and Family Involvement in the district, we expand these ideas across all students across the district. So as I travel the country, I look at a lot of behavior matrices and I look at the expectations. And many schools and districts across the country have adopted be safe, be responsible, and be respectful. You need to really follow me on these parts. This is the part I'm nervous about, especially for linear analytical people. Make sure you can follow me. The second row, I did years and years of study around Black parents and their management styles. And what I found in a book called Sticking to, Getting With, and Watching Over are 3 management styles that are affection, so start at the top and move your eyes down, protection, and correction. My mind works in puzzle pieces, so I started to put things together. I'm always trying to put things together in puzzle pieces. So let's go back to be safe, which aligns with affection. And let's go back to be responsible, which aligns with protection. And let's go back to be respectful, which aligns to correction. And then I took my studies a little bit deeper and I started to study African American teachers before desegregation. When they were in the room, black teachers with black children, what were they doing? What made them successful? And what I found is that they borrowed from their family traditions and from the traditions and values and norms of the families that they were serving to create the type of practitioner they were. And one of the types of practitioners that they were the matriarch. And for today's times, I'm going to say matriarch and patriarch, the nurturer. Then there was a trickster, a person who was concerned about making sure that those students knew when they left the doors of that school how they needed to behave to stay safe and stay alive. And then the third type was the preacher, a strong disciplinarian and a person who commanded respect for the teaching profession. So if you look across each row, you have be safe, affection, matriarch, be responsible, protection, trickster, and be respectful, correction, preacher. So I want to take us a little bit deeper now. You still with me? Thumbs up if you are. Thumbs down now if you aren't. Good. Okay, I always got to do those checks. So I want to take you a little bit deeper about what we can learn from families to reach those children on the other side of the table. So when we talk about the matriarch was the type of person, you know the kind, when you come to school, they want to make sure you had breakfast. They want to make sure if you look unkept, they're going to fix your hair, take you somewhere back then they might try to clean your nails, stuff like that. And they also lived in the community. They had strong connections to the families. So the matriarch represented affection and provided tough love and functioned as a surrogate mother within a school system or father. A nurturing family is how most felt about the segregated schools, and the matriarch was the one who fostered this atmosphere. The matriarch was concerned with maintenance of family in relation to education, and this duty encompassed a concern for continuity between home and school. As the name implies, the matriarch was a bridge between home and school. The matriarch also had a job to nurture and provide affection to students and to teach them in a time when life could be overtly threatening. In pre-desegregation, teachers, as any good mother who sees a child in need, will respond to social, emotional, and educational needs of the students they serve. They took an interest in the total child. So I thought about this. Let's go to this table, the students on the other side of the table. So what would the matriarch be thinking about? The matriarch would be thinking about, who are we inviting to the table? Who's being invited to the table? Are we inviting the families? Are we making those connections out in the community? They also would be thinking about, do I have a rectangle table or a round table? And when I came in here last night and saw these round tables with the tables beautifully dressed, I'm like, this will go right with the presentation. Because what happens is you create no boundaries. And in indigenous cultures, it is believed that when you use round tables or when you use a circular form, everyone is on equal playing field. So if we're sitting on one side of the table and it's rectangular, it has no dressing, students on one side, we're on the other, we've already created some barriers maybe to being able to get closer to those students and families on the other side. But if we have a round table, we might be able to sneak in close right from the beginning. And we create that welcoming environment like those ushers I talked about a little bit earlier that says, we belong here. So have you invited the students and their families to the table? Is the table dressed in a way that says you are welcome and you belong here? Have you connected with the community and families? Is the environment nurturing and does it feel safe? Is there a connection between home and school? And you, as the host, are you displaying affection as you assume that role? The next type was the trickster. The trickster during that time would make sure that students knew things that might surround the topic of Black Lives Matter in today's society. Are you putting your hands in your pocket when you're being pulled over? Are you in at a certain time or out of a certain neighborhood at a certain time? They would just speak explicitly about how you keep yourself safe and how you keep yourself alive. The trickster also was one of those teachers back in the day, which we can't do today, but they would say, I need to go down to the principal's office, so-and-so, would you take over the class for me? But what they were doing was putting those students in leadership roles and helping them conceptualize themselves in roles that the teacher had already identified strengths around. And so the trickster also was a storyteller. Again, you know the kind. When I was in school, I had to walk 200 miles with 6 backpacks on my back, and they like to tell the stories. But they also like to know the stories of the families. And so when we think about the trickster, we think about the protection that they provided in helping students know how to behave. And that's where us teaching behaviors to fluency comes in, and also about how to be responsible. So for the trickster, what the trickster might ask is, do you know the people you're inviting to the table? Do you know their stories? Have you made any steps to get to know the students and families you're serving? Have students been placed in actual leadership positions as you prepare the table, enacting the role of teacher or achiever so that they can conceptualize themselves in these positions? Do students have opportunities to see and interact with models of their, as Harvard says, possible selves? Who can I be? Who can I see? What are you serving? I told one of my colleagues I was doing this keynote, and we were talking about this particular section, and he said, you know, it's like you get a recipe from your grandmother or your grandfather or somebody in the family, and you put all your love into it. You prepare it, and you're just so excited about the people that are going to come. And when they get there, you've prepared your grandmother's best pork dish ever, but the families are Muslim and they don't eat pork. So not knowing their stories and not knowing who's coming and not knowing who's attending can have a great impact on the success or failure of the event. And have you taught the students to code switch for their language and for their behavior? In this picture, you'll see my youngest son sitting at the back of the table, and he's sitting next to the superintendent of schools in Madison, Wisconsin. He was given the opportunity to be a part of an internship at the district level. And what they were doing was trying to show students the possibilities around educational careers. The tables are square, but the way that they've positioned, or rectangular, and the way that they position themselves creates a circle. They value my son's voice, and they wanted to hear what he had to say at a district level in deep dives. So he was able to go to the middle school that he had been a part of as a high school student and sit at the table and go into classrooms and actually give feedback on what he saw in terms of successes and failures. To the right of the superintendent is a man by the name of Alex Fralin. He was an assistant superintendent. And my son, I literally saw him see himself in Alex. Alex embraced him. Alex created this opportunity for him to be able to participate in deep dives, and my son was able to see his possible self. He also saw the other African-American man who had locks like him at the time. He has since then cut them off, but he was able to see another person again who looked like him. He was also at the table with former teachers. So when he attended the middle school, he was around the table with his former teachers, creating that, what we talked about with the circle. We're on equal levels. The African-American woman that you see was his principal at the time. And so at the district level, this is an action step. I know many of you want to leave here today with action steps. Here's an idea around what that work might look like from a trickster standpoint. The superintendent assumed the role of a preacher. The preacher wanted to make sure that the students and that the families and that the staff had a reverence for the teaching profession. They were strict disciplinarians, and their main goal was to make sure the students knew what their purposes were in life. And so they did a lot of work similar to the trickster in making sure that students could see their possible selves, but also they added that little extra touch to it around making sure that there was respect and reverence for the profession. This is the part where the staff members came in, because they also wanted to make sure that staff members felt the same way about the profession and about the work that they were doing. And I believe that Jen Cheatham was a person who instilled that in her staff and in students. So what might the preacher ask? The preacher might think about, have you taught the expected behaviors to fluency? And if we're thinking about that table analogy, the etiquette. Have you helped convey to students the purposes of getting an education? Have you instilled a sense of what self-respect means among the educational staff as professionals performing work and service? And do you use behavior management in a way that encourages students to do work and to attend to their responsibilities as future adults and leaders of the community, the way that the Madison School District for my son did for my son? And I'm happy to report that he is in an educational field, and the superintendent, she just resigned, but Alex Fralin is waiting for my son to come back, and he told him that he's going to really try to find a position for him. And so it really gave him something to work towards. And there have been times where his energy level has dropped, but he's been thinking about those promises and thinking about what's waiting for him back at home. At a classroom level, what can this look like? Hopes and dreams letters. Our children need to know that our goals and expectations for them are deeply rooted in hopes, dreams, and expectations of their families, that home and school are not two separate worlds. Ask parents to write a letter to their child and then display the letters on the classroom walls as visual reminders of the importance of families as part of the classroom learning environment. At the high school level, you can adapt this idea, and instead of having the letter hanging up around the walls, which might embarrass some of them, ask families to write their child a letter and then seal and address them to their child. Keep the letter sealed until later in December and then hand them out to each of the students to read. Students in general have reported that the process is very meaningful. A long time ago, I wrote a letter for Ari, the person that you just saw at the table with the superintendent, that turned into the book that was referenced earlier today. I'm going to read it to you very quickly. Let's get in the tub, man, because Harriet helped to wipe the slate clean so that in your life you could reign like a king. Time to get out of the tub, let's grab the towel, because Colin taught you how to lead like a general, strong, tall, and proud. Pick your dirty clothes up off the floor, throw them in your basketball hamper, don't forget to score. Wave like the River Jordan, float like the air, because Michael taught you how to shoot for the stars every day, everywhere. Put on your pajamas, brush your teeth, let your cares flow like the wind free, because Oprah taught you how to celebrate life, how to celebrate you, celebrate me. Hold your hands to the sky when you say your prayers. It'll make your arms strong. It'll show you care for the wonderful world Louis sang about out there. Jump into bed, get tucked in. Let the wonderful peace of nighttime begin. As your thoughts stroll through the parks, remember to stop and smell the roses, even in the dark. As you close your eyes and you shut them tight, let the hues of the moon serve as your nightlight, because Langston gave us words that still ring through the night. If on some nights your dreams take you to the woods, face them like a tiger. Do what a good conductor should. Find your way through the forest, do it with might. then show others a way that reveals freedom's light. Good night, my love. I wish for you sweet dreams that ride on the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. As Sojourner's mom said, let the stars hold your dreams each and every night, and when you wake in the morning, let the truth come to light. Thank you. So when families are involved in the school PBIS process, schools gain, and I got this right from your family engagement site, greater understanding between home and school, increased family engagement, higher ratings of teaching skills from both family members and staff members, improved classroom behavior through increased knowledge of children's family, cultural, and community context, confidence in family and decision-making skills, higher perceptions of the school, increased interactions and discussions with children around social and emotional learning, increased affection and positive reinforcement with less emphasis on punishment, graduates who are socially and emotionally ready to join the workforce. Can you help me out back there?
The dream and the hope of the slave. I rise. To quote the words of the famous writer and poet, Langston Hughes, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. I have been negatively stereotyped by society, enticed with drugs, overwhelmed with my mother's diagnosis with leukemia, robbed at gunpoint, and experienced the death of my brother. Despite attacks, splinters, and torn boards, still, I rise. I did not allow my personal problems to serve as excuses, because I understood each problem has a solution. And that solution lies within me. My faith in God and my ability to overcome adversity and make rational decisions has resulted in my academic success. I am committed to education, and I choose to do what is necessary, not what is popular. I stayed up until the wee hours of the morning completing assignments. I met required deadlines, and I embraced the challenges of several advanced placement courses. Without the grace of God, the nurturing of my parents, Paris Hardaway and Ernest Bridges, the support of my family, and the commitment of educators, I would not stand here today as an Anti-Defamation League unsung hero, a BTW Freedom Rider, a recipient of the prestigious Emory University M.L. King Full Scholarship, a Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Scholar, a George W. Brumley Project Grad Scholar, and a recipient of the Gates Millennium Scholarship, which will cover all of my expenses for my undergraduate and graduate studies. Had I given up, I would not stand here today as a possessor of more than $1 million in scholarship funds. Had I given in, I will not stand before you today, honored and humbled, to be the first African-American male valedictorian of Booker T. Washington High School in more than a decade. However, Sharon and I are not the only success stories of Booker T. Washington High School Senior Academy, class of 2010. Please join me in saluting those who are making impact in healthcare and nutrition. Those who will blaze the paths in the fields of athletics and fine arts. Those who will tantalize our taste buds. Those who are journeying toward touching the future as educators. Those who will redefine the banking and finance industry. And those who will protect our nation to ensure a safer, stronger tomorrow. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, we rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. We rise, bringing the gifts that our ancestors gave. We are the hope. We are the dream. We rise. We rise. We rise.
So how are the children on the other side of the table? I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question. And how are the children? I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of or cared about in our country. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, felt an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all the children in our community, in our town, in our state, in our country. I wonder if we could truly say without any hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well, even the ones on the other side of the table. What would it be like if every school leader had to answer the question at the beginning of every meeting, and how are the children? Are they all well? Wouldn't it be interesting to hear their answers? What would it be like? I wonder. Let's demonstrate our concern for the children on the other side of the table by truly getting to know the students and families we serve and utilizing the gifts they bring to the educational equation to bring our work to its highest order model. Thank you.